Hello, and welcome to Three Workplace Gurus, a podcast about the real world of work. I'm Amy.
I'm Mike.
I'm Vivian. And Amy,
Welcome.
We did it. We actually announced this correctly. That's awesome.
With a little pause, but we did it. Our
We're
intro.
getting
You forgot
there,
the
everybody.
just,
We're getting
by
there.
the way. We are just.
Oh, just. Are we
okay.
recording this again? Okay.
No. Yeah, we're just moving.
We're good.
So-
We're good. Okay.
All right. So, just what just happened, we're going to start ranting about how the workplace has flipped. Have we gone backwards? Are we moving forward? What changes have we seen? Vivian, what's been your experience?
I'm frustrated. I'm confused. I don't get it. In the ergonomic space, I feel like we've gone back 20 years, right? So, Amy, do you remember the days that we literally would cold call in person? We would literally show up at workplaces.
We go to a business park with our business cards and literature.
We would, and we would see the poor receptionist would see us coming and be like, oh no. And yes.
I may have been one of those people you did that to.
Yeah, I
You definitely were.
I think you were. I actually think you were. And anyway, and it was this sort of like, ergo what? And I was like, okay, this is new, this is young, we got to like educate people. And then, the workplace advanced so much. And in fact, when we started in ergonomics, it was, so Amy, for you, it was the ergonomic products and furniture to support people. For us, it was the training and help make those determinations, et cetera, et cetera. And then, and at that time, it was very much relegated still to the workers' comp, and it was very much in the medical world. And then companies started realizing, like, wait a minute, this is an essential benefit. It's like, not to mention the law, but, OSHA does say you have to have a safe workplace. That it does. And then Cal OSHA, of course, has an ergonomic mandate. But what I'm noticing is that, so I was going to say that everything got super, ergonomics came in front, and it came out of the medical realm. Workers' comp stopped being the driver, and it was now like, we understand that people have to be productive and feel good and, have a safe place to work, et cetera, et cetera. And then COVID came, blew everything up. Everybody left the office, and then everybody had competing priorities. Oh, I have COVID safety, I have whatever, I have, my EH&S program has just blown up, trying to figure themselves out. And now what we're hearing is, oh, I just lost my ergo budget for next year. Oh, well, we're just going to relegate this to a web page, and like a real slide backwards. And like, I feel like the fight is, not the fight, but the job to re-educate is back on. And I don't get it. And I don't think it's just ergonomics. I know Mike and Amy, you have both seen and expressed things. So that's my biggest question mark. Like, how and why? Like, why would that go away? And
Well, has the budget moved to like more health and wellness type
No.
of things, or what?
No.
It's just gone
maybe,
away.
COVID safety protocols still are a thing, but it's just like, oh, we have to reconfigure our office, or we just have to, it just went away. Like, literally went away.
Well, the cost of doing business in general.
Yeah, and
has
I'm
gone
noticing
way up, right?
we're doing a lot more to help support and give information and statistics to people within companies to bring to the CFO, to bring to management, just to get a budget back. And nobody seems to have the bandwidth for things, and everybody's so busy, and I'm just like, what is going on? So that's kind of what I'm experiencing. Well, I'd love to hear what you guys are experiencing.
So I think on the larger scale, what I'm starting to see that I'm frustrated by is these 5-day-a-week mandates. Like, we want you in the office 5 days a week. We didn't do that 5 years ago.
No.
Why are we doing it now? I
Yeah.
can't really get my head around, and I've joked about this repeatedly personally with you guys and on the podcast. Are we just trying to fill the office? Is it just a real estate decision? Like, I can't really get my head around why we would do that. Now, I'm not seeing it personally, but I definitely see it in other companies in Silicon Valley and around the world. Personally, I think it's going to fail. I don't think it will work.
Totally.
I think we're far beyond that. And so, in my head, I think when some CEO says, I want you in the office 5 days a week, I mean, what are we clocking in now?
Yeah, I don't
Like-
get that. And
Yeah, you are. You're badging in.
You
You're
are
tracking
badging in.
it.
That's true.
You are clocking in.
And-
You know, years ago, I worked for a company way back who the company was located on the East Coast, and the head of the real estate organization, which was quite large, would walk the floor, I think, at 8:30 every morning.
oh
I
God,
think.
no.
Oh yeah, I watched her do it. I went and visited and watched it, and she would walk the entire floor of the real estate team to make sure that everybody was at their desk at 8:30 in the morning. That was a daily practice. Now this was in the late 90s, maybe around 2000. But when I start hearing these things, I remember that, and I think back to that moment and think we can't actually be saying this.
Well, and
What are we
I
talking
wonder
about
if it's like a reaction to people. I don't think it's called quiet quitting. It's the idea that I'll badge in, but I'll leave after an hour. And I went to the office, but and I don't know what it is. Like, hey, we have to keep tabs. Because you're right. 5 years ago, that wasn't the case, and telecommuting was this perk and growing in popularity and demand. So hybrid was already in place. So
Right, lots of people were working from home. I remember working for my resume is wide and varied. I worked at one company where my boss said to all of us, "You can work from home one day a week. I'm great with that. You just can't make it Friday." And I kind of understood that,
you just
the
can't,
idea
because then
that
everybody would take 3 days.
can't.
again.
Yeah, basically. And so I kind of get that, but I'm just dumbfounded by this whole notion that you have to be in 5 days. I think you make a good point, Vivian. I certainly have seen or have that experience of people coming in, having lunch, and leaving. That happens a lot.
So there, I came.
I came to the
office.
I saw you.
Which that's concerning in itself, in my opinion, because then, I mean, depending on what your commute is, there's a lot of downtime in the middle of the workday.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which isn't really benefiting anybody, frankly.
No, and also, like, aren't we adults? Don't we? Like, I know where and when
Yes.
and how I'm productive, right?
Yep.
And, like, for somebody to tell you, like, you must do it this way, or worse, there are people that were hired away from the office, like in another state altogether, and then what are they supposed to do?
Right.
Oh,
I was
well,
talking
I
to a
don't live in
colleague
San
about that
Francisco
exact
or New
thing. She
York,
works remote.
Yeah.
What if we told her she lives in another state?
Yeah.
What if we told her she had to be in the office? She would quit.
And that feels somehow discriminatory, though.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And small-minded for the company. So I don't know. So I definitely the 5 day a week, or the pressure that's starting to be put. And I don't know. We've definitely seen the needle move this year. That more companies have theoretically adopted hybrid officially, but that just means you have to be
Yes.
here 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and I don't know how enforceable that is.
I don't think they can enforce it either. I don't really see it happening. Conversely, what I find frustrating are the companies that are in 5 days a week. Like, we have a company very near us that is call center-ish. And if I don't leave the office before 4 o'clock, I am stuck in the traffic of them getting out of their building, getting on the freeway. It's like,
And listen,
these people.
and it's a thing. And listen, again, this is coming from a very unique place, because there are businesses that are fully on site because that's just where the work is done: manufacturing, healthcare, whatever, biosciences, and blah blah blah. So I get
And let's
that.
say we respect that exists, and we
Totally.
support that. We're not talking about the whole workforce.
Yeah.
I know we say this all the time. It's those people who can work elsewhere.
But the other thing is that, like, it's so many people are saying I'm much more productive at home. I'm not as burnt out. This is much better. Isn't that a win for a company? Like, you actually have a healthy workforce. And they're
So I'm
mentally-
going to be your devil's advocate
Go
for the
for
day.
That's your
Because
job, Amy.
It is my job.
I think it is your
and
job.
I appreciate people coming into the office. And I will say, I mean, when I go in and there's a number of people there, some of the things, I may never open my computer the whole time I'm there. And that's okay. I've given
different
myself permission to
facet
that.
of your work.
Having said that, I can also accomplish a lot of things when I go into the office
Yeah.
by having conversations with people, not and just kind of catching up or being there. Like a project's come in, who do I have to give it to? I'm most likely going to give it to somebody who's in the office that day, who I can just see and talk to really quickly about it because I don't have to schedule a call with them
Right.
and try to fit it into their schedule. So there are opportunities too to being into the office, and you can kind of get to know them on a little deeper level sometimes.
True.
So that would be my like fight for going in would be it doesn't. I'd agree with you, Mike, on the 5 days. I'm not sure how that's a win for anyone now.
Yeah.
I feel like people when we go look backwards, I think there was not a good balance of personal and professional life. We all
Totally
worked
not.
too many hours. We were away from our families. We had to outsource a lot of care maybe for our children and their activities because we couldn't be home for that. And I do think the blessing from COVID is that people have balanced that out a little bit. You know, people want to go pick up their children from school and then they can go home and work later once they put them to
and
bed.
who cares when you're doing the work if your work allows for that? Like if
Yeah.
you're a customer service, clearly, okay, you're in real time. But like, why would anyone care if at 2:30? Like I was just out in LA and I had to help take care of my granddaughter, who's 2.5. So I would stop at 2:30, pick her up, and then like plug in a little bit later. Like who cares? I got it done.
Right.
Well, and think about this. I'm about to travel to the South Asia, and we'll be there for a week. So, you know, my typical practice is to work. This may sound awful, but I get up and work in the middle of the night because I'm really off
And you
schedule
won't work
anyway.
on the plane, I know that.
I won't work on planes.
And you know,
You're
I
the only
love
one
working
I
on the
know
plane.
who loves that.
Oh my God, I love it. And then I didn't have Wi-Fi coming home, and I'm like, but, anyway,
I figure if I'm giving up my weekend, I'm just going to watch movies and read books. And, you know.
I get
But-
it. I get it.
But obviously I have to work a different schedule. And while I'm there, you know, I'm there for 5 days. I'm essentially living a life that is solely dedicated to work. So I get up in the middle of the night and I work for a couple of hours because I'm awake. And when I get up at 8 or 9 in the morning to go to the office, they start much later in India than we do and work much later in the day. I'm sort of free of worrying about what's happening in California. You know, I don't have to stress as much. But I have to develop a whole schedule around how I work that doesn't have much of a personal life, really. You know, I'm going out to dinner with some coworkers, whatever. I mean, I don't mean in any way to say that I'm suffering because I'm not, but I'm devoting a lot of time to work and how it happens, and I'm giving up an entire weekend for that.
Yeah.
Because I've got to I've got to fly for 24 hours each way. You know.
Oh,
So
God, you are.
The
Right.
point is, we're doing that when we travel, and so if I can do that, and there are certainly people out there. I was one of these pre-COVID who are traveling once or twice a month, who are maybe in the office 1 or 2 weeks a month because that's their job. So if they can do it, if the sales guys who work remotely because they're in some region can do it, what are we trying to solve for? That's always the question that I have to ask. What are we trying to solve for?
I agree.
And I think we're trying to solve for executives who are just pissed off because they don't know where their employees are.
Yeah, but they're
I
not
don't
even
know.
in the office. So, like, what?
Nope.
You know what I mean? And then, I don't know. So I think that's one way we've gone backwards. And Amy, you said earlier when we were just sort of talking before coming on, you mentioned the word cubicle. So what's going on there?
Yeah, I think, we're seeing more and more that, you know, prior we were doing a lot of benching, right? You were max fitting people into a workplace and trying to get your biggest bang for your real estate.
Right.
Is really it. They wanted the least amount of square footage to fit the most amount of people.
Yeah.
And we didn't really, if you think about how we worked, it was very rare that we were on the phone on a Zoom all day long, like we are now. It was a lot of like either heads down or you went into a room and you met with your team right there. You know, you had your serendipitous collisions throughout the office, but it wasn't like the benching was just you just did your work. You know, it was
I'm going to
heads
write
down.
that
But I will
down.
tell you,
Serendipitous collisions.
People
I
didn't
love
like
that.
it.
Yeah. Some people didn't like it.
They
right.
said, I
True.
can't get
It was
work
too
done
much.
because there's too much distraction and I can't concentrate.
Exactly.
And then I remember seeing a guy, and then we'll get back to the cubicle, but he literally put up a wall of monitors, put on headphones, and he said, I'm usually not listening to anything. I'm just canceling out the noise, and I want to make it look like I'm, like, don't bother me. He
Right.
said, otherwise
the
I can't.
pendulum swung way too far that direction. I'm not saying that was correct, but it was the pendulum swung, right? Because it was more of a cost consideration more than comfort, I would say, right? And really, if you're sitting around the people, you're going to talk to them and you're going to get engaged and you're going to have some conversations that you may not have been able to have otherwise. Having said that, now the pendulum's swinging back and people are looking for more privacy. They want to know if they come into the office that they can sit at their workstation and get their work done. It's not going to be like home. There's still going to be noise. One of the things that people forget, even though you're sitting in a cubicle, everybody can still hear you talking on the phone. But they forget that because they have those like barriers around them.
Right.
So that's another thing that has to be retrained, I guess, is that you're not in any privacy there. You're
really not.
You've
Maybe
removed
visually,
the
you're cut off.
distractions. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're awful.
They are awful.
That's really
they really
going back.
are. Like,
That's going back like more than 20 years. That's just like, ugh, what? No, what?
yeah,
Why not just give
I used to have
offices
they're expensive.
They are expensive.
Really, they're expensive to do. So.
Are they at least
yeah, so
adjustable?
I used to have a
No.
10 by 10 corner cubicle at one office, like 10 by 10. I had a lateral file, a big desk area, and a table and 4 chairs.
It's like a office.
It was.
But wait, I have to
On
ask
the
a
flip
question.
side, I had a 4x5 one. Like when you talk about a call center, I was reminiscing
Oh.
about this just yesterday with an old colleague, where we had to dial for dollars on a Friday afternoon.
Oh, God.
Who answered? I mean, actually, people
Nobody.
answer their phone on a Friday afternoon. But we get $5 every appointment we got, and we literally sat in these little tiny cubes, just dialing and dialing and dialing, and talk about we could hear each other. Because he and I were joking that we both have very loud voices, and somebody turned around and told both of us to be quiet one day.
Oh my gosh! Wow. But going back to the cubicle for a second, are they even adjustable? Like, is there a sit-stand desk inside of that?
Oh
cubicle?
yeah, you can do all height
good.
adjustable in there.
Right.
Yeah.
That at least helps. But
I would hope everybody is doing height adjustable desks and a decent ergo chair, at least.
a
Yeah.
minimum.
Yeah.
I mean, like, geez. Like,
Where we haven't gone backward is, Vivian, is if you remember when you first started doing height adjustable desks, they were so cost prohibitive, they were so expensive. And it was really, I think you and I used
Yeah.
to do it where we were like, well, you could have 3 here for your 50 employees, and or they needed a doctor's note
yeah, they need a doctor
to get
note, or
a
you
height
have
adjustable.
We used to call it the vacation station, and there was the one.
Yeah, that was it.
There was the one to stand in the corner where they put like Hawaiian decorations, and that's where you can go like get away from that really existed.
And so you could stand up at your desk. Now it's not cost prohibitive. It's pretty close to the same as a static desk.
Right.
So almost everybody does do that.
Interesting,
Have a height adjustable.
huh? So what
Let me
else
pose
do
the
you think
question.
we're going backwards?
Pardon,
Aside
say
of the
again.
5-day like push to go back, what else do you notice?
I think that's the extreme that I see that I don't understand.
Right.
I do, I mean, admittedly, Amy and I are in a bit of a bubble in Silicon Valley where I think things have remained fairly constant for a while now. I've talked about the fact that we're building a new office location. It's more collaborative. It's more open. We think more about meeting space and the kind of environment we're trying to project. And we're not asking people to come back full time. We're definitely
Right.
encouraging, going back to something Amy said, encouraging people to come in once in a while. I've said many times, hey, we should tell people who live within 40 miles,
Just come in.
we'd like to see you once in a while. We'd like to see you. And the leadership team's like, yeah, we probably do need to
But
say
don't
something.
do it in a passive aggressive way.
No. An
That's
invitation.
what I do see.
Yes.
What do you
I think
mean?
it's an invitation. I mean, I'll admit, Amy, I'm passive aggressive. Like, I'll walk down the hall and see people I haven't seen in 4 months and say, where the hell have you been? Like, I do it. I admit I do it. But, they also know who I am and what I do for a living, and so I think that makes a difference. But I was going to pose the question, I wonder if we need to go backwards a little bit in order to find the right medium, the happy medium. Maybe we go back and then we go forward to more people recognizing the benefit of coming in. I don't know. I'm just throwing out an idea there that maybe there's a benefit to trying it, even though we know it won't work, because it will get people more engaged.
I don't know.
In coming
I
in and
feel
being
like,
with their coworkers.
why don't you listen to your employees and what they need? Like, isn't that
Totally
a
agree with
concept?
that.
Like, why don't you poll them? Like, what works for you? What I mean, it's one thing to be saying, like, look, the business has certain needs, and we need X, Y, Z. That's valid.
Right.
But like, why not have it be like a discussion? What works in the office? What doesn't work? How can we support you? And I feel like, Mike, that's been your philosophy this whole time, which is, hey, the office is sort of where you are, kind of thing. But I don't know.
And I think a lot of companies do poll and gather that data. What they do with it could be questionable sometimes, right? Depending on the company and what information they get.
Right.
I do think one thing that could be explained a little bit more is if you're going to mandate me to come in for 3 days a week, help me understand where we failed. Why do you feel like you need me to come in 3 days a week or 5 days a week? Because then that will help me determine what my day would look like when I came into the office, so that I can help improve those metrics, whatever they might be. Like, if they have some factual things that productivity was down, for example, or collaboration or innovation or whatever, if an employee understands that that's what was lacking, it might entice them a little bit more as to when they come in, that's what they need to make sure they're doing when they're in the office.
That's a very good point, and have that communicated clearly.
I don't ever see that part of the conversation. It's just either fill out a survey and then everybody fills it out, and then it's like, come in the office 5 days a week or 3 days a week, whatever. And there has to be a little bit of an explanation of give and take, right?
Right.
But I don't think there is one. I think that's the whole point.
But there's got to be metrics. There's some metrics there that is.
I don't think that there is.
I mean, let's talk about.
I think it's an emotional decision
the thing
based
about
on the
Amazon,
need to control.
Right. I think they was the first company to say, like, you're coming in 5 days a week. You have until X amount of time to get yourself together, and then you're fired if you're not going to do it. Why? Like, what? I don't know other companies that, I mean, there's a push for that, but I don't understand what drives that decision, to your point. Just because I say so?
Yeah, that's what I don't understand either.
Because we have all these buildings we have to fill? I don't know. I mean, other companies have been like, hey, let's get rid of the buildings, or let's downsize.
Well, that's what's going to end up being the challenge, is that a lot of these companies have offloaded a lot of their real estate, and then they're going to come in, and this is going to be a person like Mike's biggest nightmare, right? Because they've offloaded all this real estate, and now they're mandating them to come in a certain number of days, and they won't even have the right space for them.
I'm not personally in that position. I agree, but there are people I know who are, and it's frightening. I think there are no metrics. I think it is simply this desire to have everybody come back is simply about control. Nothing else.
I think it could be.
I'm not seeing anything else.
Yeah.
I would say the other challenge that I don't know if we've gone backwards, but I don't think we've figured it out, is what is it that employees want when they come into the office? What are the expectations that a workplace should look like? I don't think we've actually figured that out anymore. We had it figured out 5 years ago, and we've been testing and piloting and doing a number of different things, but it hasn't come out truly what it is. We need a lot of technology now. We know that. We talked about cubicles. We need a lot more amenity spaces. We need people to feel like they're at home when they're in the office, different things like that. But that's not been yet a reason for people to come into the office. So what is it?
I mean, I understand if you're a collaborative team, and there's that thing about in-person, the spontaneity, the discussions that happen. There is a very big difference in person than on Zoom or emails. And emails, forget about it. Can I rant on that for a second? Nobody reads. I'm not joking. If you put, God forbid, put 2 different things in an email, forget about it. I don't understand. True. Or you'll ask I'll ask like something that has 3 parts to it, and the answer will be yes. That doesn't make any sense. Yes to what? Anyway, am I alone in this, or do you find that too?
You are not.
It's weird. Or there's no response. I'm like, excuse me.
And I'm a short emailer. I like to say as little as possible in emails because I personally can't stand emails that come with a lot of paragraphs. It literally sits in my inbox sometimes
because it's
until I have time to read it. Yeah. But that's why I like to just send single, couple sentences, and then they still don't read it. I'm like, I made that really simple for you.
I think it's the TikTok thing.
Oh, it is.
Everything has to be short and moving on to the next thing. There's just no patience for that.
It's like middle school. Do you like me? Check the box. Yes.
We go through this all the time at PBE, just from like a marketing perspective. Like short visual, nobody reads. I'm like, but there's some things that have to be spelled out. I personally, if you write a good, compelling email and sort of story-based, I will read it. But it has to be like spaced out on the page. If it's just like all words, I'm like, I can't. That feels overwhelming. But
it's been a practice of mine for a long time when I have to write an email like that, to write it and set it aside and look at it later. And I always end up cutting it in half, always.
Interesting.
I was an English major. I like to,
right,
poetically explain everything, and then I go back and realize, nobody cares about that. I'll delete
Well, you know
half
what's interesting? There's ChatGPT, and then do you guys know about Claude? Claude.ai.
Claude?
Claude.ai is another sort of ChatGPT AI engine. Pretty amazing. I encourage. It's literally like the name Claude, CLAUDE.ai. Anyway, and I was like, let me just see how. I keep hearing like, let AI write your emails for you. And I have to say, I still write my own emails because I have my own voice and what I want to do, but I was curious. And I was shocked at how really good, some of these emails were, but they were super, super long. But they were super bullety. You know what I mean? Nobody is even, my point is, even AI is understanding. You have to present in a way that's not overwhelming. Mm-hmm. But
it is really interesting, and we're kind of diving into this at my company. How to use AI successfully, and I think there's a lot of us are now putting the data in there, putting the communication we want to send out in there, and then taking what we get back and then making it look like or sound like us. And I think it's an effective
get an idea
tool.
Of how else can I put this and what would be more effective. I definitely done
precisely.
That. But okay, here's another question: does anybody talk on the phone anymore ever?
Yes, I
Really?
do.
Yeah.
I do.
Almost never.
But I won't call somebody. Where I get awkward now is sometimes you call people and they're at the park, or you just have bad timing, even though it's in the middle of the workday. So I do get uncomfortable with that. So I'm that person who sends a text of "Hey, can you talk?"
Okay, that is true. That is true. And I mean, mostly it's Zoom. Sometimes it is a call, but it's always a scheduled call. So let me rephrase. Anybody ever do just pick up the phone and call somebody? No, you're saying no. You
Not
don't.
very often.
Yeah.
I do what Amy does.
Yeah.
I text.
Yeah.
I've done it with both of you. I know we all do where we text each other and say, "Hey, can you give me 5 minutes?"
Yeah.
But it is a weird
that's a
thing
courtesy
because, but we're also, I think all of us, we're on Zoom all day long a lot of times,
Yes.
right? And so if picking up the phone and calling and that disrupts, the meeting that you're in, it's kind of a weird thing too. I don't know. What drives me crazy is more what it could have been a 5-minute conversation, and so we put something on the calendar for next week for a half an hour or an hour, and you're like, but that could have been a quick conversation.
Well,
that's my fight for going into the office, because we could have just knocked that out of the
In 2
Oh,
seconds.
the amount of decisions you can make by just walking down the hall and talking to somebody, I do miss that a lot. I do have the T-shirt that says, I just attended a meeting that could have been an email.
Oh my God, I need that.
I need that.
Sure. I think that's our Just Three Workplace Guru shirt. I love it.
Amy, good one.
Let's
Our merch is
co-brand
gonna
it.
come
We
soon.
should. I like that.
Our merch is coming.
With the logo, we'll do the logo and then we'll do that.
Perfect.
Love it,
Okay.
love it,
We
love
got
it.
the you're on mute. Now we've got that. I just attended an email that
Oh.
could have been a meeting that could have been an email. Very good.
When was the last time you were in a meeting where someone didn't start the meeting with that? You're on mute.
Oh no,
I don't remember the last time.
every single
Every single meeting.
every
every-
single time. Excuse me, you're on mute.
A lot of times that's me.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you're the culprit. Right. Oh my gosh. So, Amy, see, 'cause I feel like you're in a space that's trying to move the workplace forward. So,
Yes.
do you get resistance? Like, maybe in your world, outside of cubicles, it's not so backwards.
Resistance internally with our company or with our clients?
With your clients, because you're seeing so many different companies.
Oh, sure. So that's the challenge that they're faced with is how do we create an office space that's going to entice these people back? They're all facing with resistance. So they're trying to figure out what's going to be that draw, right? Is it food? Probably not anymore. Is it like amenities, spaces? You know, it's so unknown what it really is. What's going to earn that commute? So that's the resistance that they're faced with and that we are always trying to help solve. And that's why I think the metrics would really help. That communication, when you're doing the programming and, you know, maybe doing focus groups and creating what communication is going to look like, I think is really important because we don't like change. You know, and if I could just sit at home and not have to drive somewhere and, you know, not be interrupted and have full control of my day, why would I go in the office?
See, and I think there's a misunderstanding out there too that like, oh, people are sloughing off and oh, they're at home and I don't know what they're doing. And I think there are some people that might be taking advantage of that. I know some people have like juggling two jobs, so they're getting two salaries. And, you know, I think that's the exception. I think more people fight being too productive at home and there's a lack of boundaries. And I'm like, why aren't companies understanding that? Like, they're certainly not saying we're going to ask you to come to the office to save yourself from yourself. But people are starting at 6 a.m. I know it because I get the emails.
I'm that I do.
Yeah.
And I mean, I work more probably now than I would have worked if I was in the office. You're getting an extra 2 hours out of me for one because of the commute. I can just roll out of bed and start working, you know, and I can start heating up dinner. I don't really cook while I'm working.
I just heat.
So, yeah, I can heat up like nobody's business. But, you know, like, so there are benefits to it as well. But
I think there were people who were slacking off in the office all day.
Yes.
We're not really solving a
No,
problem. Because
definitely
we
not.
all know people who never did any work when they came. You know, that's just a fact of life.
Yes.
So you're not really fixing the problem. I want to go back to something that you both said about, you know, what drives people to come to the office. I think there's increasing information, data that seems to say that the most important driver is connection with your coworkers. In other words, sort of a team understanding of why we come together and what we want to accomplish when we do that. And right now I feel like that's the biggest driver. It's certainly something that we think about at my company and that we talk about a lot. How are we driving understanding as groups around how we come together and what we accomplish when we are in the office together? And right now I think that's probably one of the only drivers. I think you're right, Amy. It isn't the amenities. It isn't the desk or the conference room or the AV or the lunch or the pool table, or none of that stuff matters anymore. I think it is literally connection to people, which is such a post-COVID thing to want. You know, we were so disconnected from each other. And
I
that
think we're
was such
still
a
disconnected from each
painful
other.
thing. We are. You're right.
I really think COVID messed us up, and our social media has messed us up. And I know that's a
Oh my
topic.
God, can I give you a story about that?
Yes.
This happened
Yes.
to me last week. So we have Teams, and I guess you can call on Teams and you can message on Teams. I'm not very good at it, but
The
a
tool you're
majority
talking about.
as a tool. And a majority of us, for me, a majority of my day, I'm out in the field. So I'm driving around and I'm doing different things. And I had a very time-sensitive thing that needed to get done. And so I texted, I called this person, and I sent them an email. Called on the phone, text, email. No response.
Uh-oh.
Then I find out that they are calling and messaging me on that platform. So I guess I shouldn't say a name.
You
On
already
that
said it.
platform. Well, I don't see that stuff as I'm driving around.
Oh.
It's not as accessible to me. And so at the end of the day, I see it and I follow up and I'm like, this was time sensitive. Can you return one of my phone calls to my cell phone? Like, let's just have a quick conversation. This was a 2-minute conversation. And they refused. They only want to do it on the platform. So frustrating, right? Because it's like you're hiding behind I don't know what.
Wow.
So that was very interesting to me that that's like our mode of communication now, which isn't as easily accessible if you're out and about.
Interesting. That's interesting. Why the refusal? But
I think that's another problem, is zeroing in on the right way to communicate as a team.
Yeah.
What's the best way?
Yeah.
Because we can Slack, we can text, we can email, we can whatever the platform is that you're blah blah blah. Like there's just too many
Yeah, too many.
Options.
And I have literally, I'm not joking, I have been, this morning it happened, I literally was on a Zoom call with one of my coworkers, and we were sharing my screen, and then we slacked a group Slack to ask a question from another coworker, and then at the same time I texted yet another this is all happening in real time. I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. So, yeah.
How do we manage that? Like, that's too much to manage.
badly.
Badly.
Yeah, badly.
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 And then there's the person who disappears. Like you just said, I can't get them on any platform. I'm like, where are you? Like,
Well, that was my concern, is like, you're definitely, this person doesn't come into the office, and so like, where are you, and do you not use a phone?
maybe
Like,
not.
you use your computer as your communication
I
tool.
kind of wish the phone was just now invented. Because think about that. Think if all we had was words, right? And then one day, like, you could hear their voice too. Everybody, that's all we would do.
Well, look at how we progressed in terms of seeing the person when they're talking.
So maybe that's part of the, hey, if everybody's in the office, like, let's put an end to this nonsense. It's just not going about the right way.
Do you know when I use my phone?
When?
In the car.
Yes.
Like
That's
the
when I
minute
catch
I
up
get
with
in the
people.
car at night, I call somebody.
I think you're right. Because I'll tell you what happens after a whole day of Zoom and calls. Like my phone rings. I'm like, I can't. I'm done. Like I'm just done. I'm overloaded. And then I'll be like, I'm sorry. Can we talk tomorrow? Or I'll text them or whatever. And then I become that jerk.
Well, but there are a lot of people, for instance, in your personal life who you can't talk to during the day because we're working,
Yeah.
So you call, I have an hour commute, give or take, and so I
And that's why
typically
you'll
do
a
that.
catch-up. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to, when my father was still living, I would call him when I got in the car.
Oh, that was me and my
because
brother.
back in the day, driving over the hill where we are in California, I would lose him halfway, so I only had to talk to him for half an hour.
Oh my!
And he called me on it. He said, "Michael, I think you're just calling me right now so that you can only talk to me for half an hour," which he used to do to his
Truth to
mother.
that,
So I
probably.
said, "Well."
But
yes,
when my
okay,
mom
fine.
was still with us, I used to call her all the time in the car, and it became a joke because instead of saying "How are you," she would say "Where are you?"
Where are you?
Because she knew I was on my way to somewhere. It's pretty funny. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I'll say one other thing, which is interesting. So I mentioned ergonomics earlier, that we're sort of kind of in this re-education mode. But is there any other amenity that you're seeing has taken a back seat?
I think all of it has, really. I've seen some discussion lately about fitness centers. You know, nobody wants to go to a fitness center at the office. They want to go to theirs. So how is that benefiting me?
Well,
I do think that people like food. I think they like meals.
yes.
But I don't think that they like it because it's free food. I think they like it because it's a chance to sit down with their coworkers.
So one
And
thing
I
I
think
think
that
on
matters.
that would change, and Mike, I think this is going to maybe reflect a little bit on like your new space, but those amenity spaces are now maybe shared amenity spaces with other companies. They're not necessarily your cafe or your conference room or training room. Now it's part of the building's responsibility to
interesting.
manage.
That's interesting.
And I think that's an interesting philosophy in the sense of, let's say, if they're wanting to eat, now they're not just having to eat with their coworkers, but they might be meeting people from other companies in that cafe. So
Yeah.
there's a little bit more crossover.
I don't know if this is happening all over the world. My sense is that it is that everybody's doing that. All buildings are building the amenities into the building rather than into the individual
That's
space.
so
And so,
interesting. Huh. It's actually smart.
yeah. But it's shared, and some people like that it's shared, and some people don't. You know, it's a different way of thinking about it.
Well, it doesn't go with your branding, maybe, or it doesn't go with the culture you're trying to exhibit, but, you know, I think it's pretty exciting to see that happening.
Well, if I want to go do a one-on-one with somebody and we're both walking on a treadmill while we're doing the one-on-one, I kind of can't do that publicly because who knows what we're talking about. Maybe we can't
True.
discuss that.
If
Or
it's
we go
shared.
across the hall to the dining space, the cafe. Can we have a business discussion at lunch? Maybe, maybe not. Or we have to think differently about how we do it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't think we've solved any problems today.
I don't think we have either. And, you know, it's interesting.
But I don't think that
'cause
was the point.
That wasn't the goal. The goal was to share our rants of, are we going forward or
sharing
going
our rants and our
backwards?
questions, but I mean, my three big rants is like, just because people are out of sight, don't keep them out of mind. Two, if you want people back, I think you're right. Like, give a good, cogent, meaningful reason, and do it in a way that's sensitive to other things that people need. Because the path we were on before was awful. It was burnoutville. It was just like, in fact, there were
Unhealthy.
so many amenities to keep you at the office that it was kind of sick the other way. From your traveling dentist to your dry cleaners, like never leave.
Good
keep
point.
working,
Yeah.
keep working, right? So that didn't work either. So I don't know. I feel like give us credit as adults that we are responsible and we know what we need to do, and we also don't want to die in the process. Is that so hard?
Well said. I like that.
I think that was a good summary of the conversation and the takeaways for today.
All
and
right.
this is how we're going to solve world problems.
We'll have to check back on this in about 6 months and see where we're
Yeah.
at. So,
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Thank
and
you.
Look forward to talking to you soon.
all right.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.